Chapter 2. Rapid thunderous footsteps heralded the first signs of aggression as the hero charged the demon. The possessed remnant of the original Godzilla held his ground, bracing himself for the inevitable collision. But the champion did not tackle its destroyer. Instead, he stopped just in front of him and threw his full momentum into a devastating punch. The impact was louder than a thunderclap and served as the prelude to a sequence of rapid-fire punches to the demon's face and torso. The heroic Godzilla, though 10 meters shorter and 10,000 pounds lighter than his villainous counterpart, clearly held the advantage in melee combat, driving his foe backward with every blow. For his own part, the demon was revising his opinion of the Godzilla that currently defied him. None of the 3 juvenile gods he had slain had been so tenacious or powerful. He narrowed his pure white eyes. That did not mean that he was strong enough. He blocked one punch, and then with his other hand, he aimed a swing at his rival's head, only for the heroic Godzilla to do something completely unexpected. Godzilla caught the claws in both hands, then pivoted his body, turning his back on his foe. He then leaned forward and pulled with all his strength, throwing the possessed Godzilla over his shoulder and through a nearby parking structure, kicking up a large cloud of dust and debris. Godzilla did not let up. He knew that if his foe was anywhere approaching his own strength, that the fight was nowhere near over. He blasted the ground within the dust cloud with his atomic ray, and the azure beam strafing the area he believed his doppelganger lay several times. But when he seized fire, the light did not fade. As the cloud lifted, the demon was once again revealed to the light of day, his own spines glowing. He unleashed his own atomic breath, strong enough to bend nearby trees with the force of its passing, directly at his enemy's torso. The proud hero tried to hold his ground, but with a scream of pain, he fell to the ground. The demon advanced, almost seeming to grin evilly as he did so, and charged his ray yet again. But the old champion was only down, not out. Just before the malevolent monster could fire, the heroic Godzilla beat him to the punch, blasting the side of his face. His atomic ray did not have the same power behind it, but it still struck with enough force to throw off his foe's aim, causing the far stronger beam to bifurcate a distant skyscraper. The demon roared in rage, and the hero returned the challenge, punching his fists together and assuming a fighting stance. The 2 kaiju charged one another once more. At the same time, the 2 identical Godzillas had begun fighting each other, but it was clear that one of them was a superior fighter. Godzilla 2000, so named because he had been the first of the Godzillas that emerged in a new millennium, fought slowly and ponderously, as if he were either over or underthinking every move. His foe, though identical in appearance, fought in a far different manner. Reflexes honed in a battle with Megaguirus. He found the Godzilla he fought to be slow and predictable. Every swipe of a claw he blocked, and every attempted bite he punished. It did not matter to him that his rival could heal from these injuries. Eventually, his energy reserves would run low, and he would finally fall. Finally, seemingly more out of frustration than anything, Godzilla 2000 charged his atomic ray, lavender spines crackling like the fire that they resembled as they shifted to an orange hue. Mere seconds later, he blasted his rivals with the same beam that had disfigured Orga and crippled the Millennium spaceship. He focused on his enemy's torso, but once the explosion had hidden his foe from his gaze, he swept the beam from side to side, destroying nearby structures and setting the ruins ablaze. With the fire illuminating everything, he did not notice the loud crackling sound until it was too late, and he found his own chest struck dead center by yet another orange atomic ray. He attempted to hold his ground, but found himself sliding backwards until his bike embedded themselves in a building behind him. As the speedier Godzilla emerged from the fire and smoke, the two Godzillas mused on the differences between them. Godzilla 2000's beam was more explosive and volatile, but the other Millennium Godzilla's beam had a greater force behind it. As the slower Godzilla struggled to free himself, his faster rival approached, but suddenly he stopped and ducked. From somewhere behind him came a bright blue atomic ray, striking Godzilla 2000 in the face with enough force to send him the rest of the way through the building he had been trapped in. As Orga's killer groaned in the rubble, Megaguirus' killer stood up and turned around to face the one who dared to try to strike him from behind. A third Godzilla roared a challenge at him, this one visually distinct from the other two. Bumpy gray hide and irregular silver spikes adorned him, as did an unusual feature for any Godzilla: a large scar across his chest, where the Absolute Zero cannon had inflicted such a serious wound that not even a Godzilla's regeneration could fully restore the flesh. He had watched the battles taking place amongst his similar-sized kin, exercising patience despite his urge to fight. The demon and the champion appeared evenly matched from his perspective, but between the other two, one held a clear advantage, making it the greater threat. He was not much faster than the Godzilla against whom this other challenger fought so well, meaning it was simply pragmatic to attack him while he was distracted. But as the two of them glared and roared at each other, a third roar joined them. Godzilla 2000 had freed himself from his prison of concrete and steel and was enraged at the birth of them. The battle had just become more interesting. At the same time, the Titans began to battle. The most famous of the Godzillas was perhaps the most predictable, immediately lashing out with his beam weapon to gauge his enemy's strength. The larger one, the one with the spines like shards of glass, seemed surprised that he would use his strongest weapon so soon. The leaner one, the one that resembled him so closely, seemed more annoyed that he had struck first than anything else. He had begun to charge his beam a second time, but the leaner one struck first and took aim at his face. Screaming in pain, he had blindly swept his beam across the ground. When he had opened his eyes, his near-identical foe had closed the distance between them and was slashing and punching him. Godzilla snarled. His foe was clearly more experienced in close quarters combat than he was. He would simply have to drive him back. He charged his atomic breath for a point-blank blast. He knew that his style was somewhat predictable, but all of his foes had ultimately fallen to it. The other Godzilla surprised them, pausing its assault to bite his throat. Clearly, it thought the atomic ray was the full extent of his power. How naive. Unable to emerge from his jaws, the nuclear energy returned to his body and then surged outwards in a powerful nuclear pulse that shattered nearby buildings as if concrete and steel were mere glass. But his attacker, though blown backwards, did not appear harmed. Indeed, after a moment passed, it seemed that he had absorbed the radiation. Godzilla was infuriated. How dare this doppelganger absorb his power? He charged forward, intending to tear it apart with his claw and teeth, and his foe obliged. Red blood was spilled by tooth and claw, but beneath the roars and snarls, they heard a deep creaking and groaning. Pausing in their hostilities, both looked towards the source of the sounds, to see the third Godzilla, the largest of them, pushing one of the humans' skyscraper down to crush them. They both roared in rage and fired their atomic rays upward in an attempt to destroy what fell towards them. But by then, it was too late. The skyscraper had fully toppled, and the bulk of it fell on top of the both of them, silencing them. Near the base of the fallen structure, the eldest of the Godzillas, the relic of the Permian era, let out a roar, challenging both and either of them to get up and face him. He was a predator at heart, and had used their focus on each other to his advantages, but he knew that he would have to fight in earnest before the day was gone. Nevertheless, with any luck, he had caused enough damage to tilt the odds in his favor. He walked slowly towards where his two foes were buried, feeling for any vibration and listening for any muffled roars. He needn't have to bother. Mere moments later, both of his rivals emerged from the rubble, looking no worse for wear, and now both focused on him. The Permian predator huffed. It was going to be a long day.